Welcome to another episode of Mission Compliance, Unleashing Growth Potential for Defense Contractors. In today's episode, we continue down the road of CMMC, its regulations, and controls. Up next is IA.L2-3.5.11, obscure feedback of authentication information. We'll break down what this control means, why it matters, and how it impacts your organization's cybersecurity posture. We'll also provide practical insights and strategies for achieving compliance and securing your systems effectively. So whether you're a defense contractor aiming to win more contracts or simply someone interested in bolstering your cybersecurity knowledge, you're in the right place. Oh, and by the way, this is episode number 111. Time where all the ones take over. Make a wish.
You're number one in my book, Roman.
We're joined once again today by Mike Frater, President of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC Professional Assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
So, Mike, this week we're talking about obscuring authentication. You know, some of these controls can be a little tough to understand. And for this one, I actually had to go to refer to our YouTube channel on this control. On our YouTube channel, we do these controls in these podcast episodes, but on our channel, we have a specific YouTube video for each control. So I actually had to go to our YouTube channel to watch this video to be like, what the heck does this mean? And you even mention in the video that the wording of this one is strange. And it's a short control. It's only one assessment point. The video is like 4 minutes. And you didn't get to the meat of the control for a minute 45 because you were vamping about how the controls the control name was weird and you didn't like the word obscure and all this stuff. So there's not a lot to cover in this one. This one was a little bit confusing in its wording. You even mentioned it in your video. So with all that being said, why is this control important?
So the control itself is important. No doubt about it. It is. So obscure feedback of authentication information. But like some of these NIST controls, if you read that, you're like, what on earth does that mean? And I do really think I think two things about it. One, looking at this for about the 1.7 millionth time over the past 10 years, they did a pretty good job of really making the word short. But it's kind of like, when lawyers write contracts, and if you're a lawyer, I don't mean any offense by this, but sometimes, using big words is not as good as using small words. All this really is basically saying, look, if you're typing a username and password into, a system to log in, some piece of your login, i.e. your password, should be obscured, right? In air quotes, obscured, which just means don't don't have a situation where you're typing a password and people can see your password.
Mhm.
I got to tell you, for like 99% of our audience, maybe 98%, um, they're going to be using systems where they don't have a choice about this. There is no setting to unobscure when you put your password into Windows.
Yeah.
There is no ability to unobscure putting your password into Microsoft Office 365, GCC High, or Azure Government. Blows my mind, right? But again, remember this compliance standard does have to be created for those people who create their own custom systems. And I'm always in awe of people who do silly things like they create a system, even an Access database, and they make it so that the password is, something that they can type in on the screen and somebody who would be over their shoulder can actually see the password. Interestingly, there are some unexpected scenarios where you could potentially need to obscure feedback of authentication information. It might be a stretch, but I'm going to try to stretch it out anyway, right? Like that's, you know, so what is it? What is this pointed at? It's pointed at the scenario where you're logging into a system and, if you're the designer of the system or it's custom system, whatever it may be, you type in your password and you shouldn't be able to see that, you shouldn't be able to see the password being typed in, but also the feedback of authentication information means ideally you're not saying, hey, you got the password wrong. It should just say authentication error because that would be obscuring the feedback on the authentication information. So again, this is like a control that for 98% of people is going to just kind of be an automatic easy win, right? And we'll talk about the answer, in a minute, but if you're one of those 2% of companies who maybe you've designed your own system that's going to hold CUI, this is an important control. It's an important safety feature. You should not give them such information in telling them that their login was bad, that they can figure out what the password might be or figure out what, how to authenticate or something like that. That's what this is about. It's just about making logins and the process of logging in or authenticating to a system continue to be secure regardless of whether it's an out-of-the-box system or whether you're developing your own system. But yeah, that's what it's about. So it's all about making sure that you're not making it easy for someone to figure out how to authenticate to a system.
I personally have never had a computer, even out of the box, that didn't automatically hide your password with the little asterisks or the little bubbles or whatever. But it's interesting that you bring up that instead of it saying the password's incorrect, it says authentication error. Because if this was solely talking about hiding the password input, we've had other controls, and I don't know what the control number is, but I do know that we've covered it already on this podcast that talks about pattern hiding. And isn't that just that part of it? Isn't that what we're talking about? Is pattern hiding so that you can't see passwords. So you do also, I think, have to think about the authentication error as you mentioned.
That's right. Yeah. I think another version of this is, and it kind of goes back to the concept of social engineering. You have to train your people that they've got to verify the identity of who's really calling in for support.
Mhm.
Particularly in a situation where someone is trying to potentially spoof someone's identity. So again, when people call a hotel and they say, "Hey, I'm Jack Smith in room 333," they got to verify that somehow. But if somebody starts going, "Oh yeah, my birthday, I can't remember my birthday. Can you tell me my birthday again?" And that user's got to be trained to not give out that birthday information for Jack Smith, right? They've got to know that they can't go and give that information away. That is another example of obscuring feedback of authentication information. You can use
Mhm.
social engineering to figure out more and more information about your potential victim by calling up, maybe their job, maybe a hotel that they're staying at, or some other some other entity that has their personal information. And that's another way that's how identity theft happens. So this also could potentially really be stretched into, if you've got human authentication involved, you may need to point out that there is training for your humans in not giving out information about people if the person asking doesn't already have it. So again, it's social engineering kind of comes to mind around this, but even that's a little bit of a stretch. It's really just don't give away too much information in the process of letting them know they failed their login.
Absolutely. So we mentioned in the intro that this is a short control. It's just one assessment point. So what is it?
Yeah, so just one assessment point. It's determine if authentication information is obscured during the authentication process. Really, more or less, this is just purely about demonstrating how the logins happen. Right, pretty easy to control. You're going to pull up a login screen. You're going to type in a password. It's going to have dots over it. Maybe you type in the wrong login. You're going to make sure it doesn't tell them, oh yeah, your password was I don't know, XYZ. Again, it's almost kind of hard to come up with an example where you wouldn't be passing this control unless um, again, you design your own system to do something really, really out of the ordinary. So yeah, but again, if you're using a custom access database to hold CUI or some other, methodology like that, it would probably be a very good thing to, just double check that situation and make sure that, your ducks are covered as far as how you authenticate.
You've already mentioned it a little bit. You've mentioned that probably 98% of people, this is automatic. This is it. This is already done. This is, pretty simple security measure. But are there any other potential difficulties in enacting this one in an organization?
You know, again, you almost have to kind of stretch, but here's what I have seen. What I have seen in the past is I have seen organizations that have created their own database or even their own ERP system, enterprise resource planning system. They've created their own system or they've highly customized it. And for whatever reason, they've done silly things like they haven't required encryption on password transmission, and that's another control. But maybe they've done something silly in terms of the feedback to the user that they didn't get their password right. Again, for me, it is a very interesting control because it's kind of, I haven't really seen an instance where we're not passing this control out of the box. But again, I am fully aware that there are a lot of instances out there, um, where again, customized systems could potentially be configured to, violate this policy.
Uh, as I've said, and I'll reiterate, I've never had a computer, professionally or otherwise, that did not automatically hide password inputs out of the box. I've never had to set that. It's just already always been there. Um, so pretty easy, but sometimes there can be a couple of weird instances here and there. So to finish off this 111th episode, time where all the ones take over. I love mentioning that. Um, we're gonna do what we always do. We're gonna end with a silly question. And since this control is all about ensuring that when you input your password, that it is disguised with stars or asterisks or something else, what if instead your password was obscured either different emojis or maybe superhero logos?
Um, as long as that password is masked, you are definitely obscuring. So it doesn't really matter too much, what it's obscured with. You could probably have a whole lot of fun. Maybe do some hippopotamus emojis as you type in characters. Hey, I'm all about it. You know,
Listen,
mhm.
listen. I think you wouldn't even need this control if you just made your password hippopotamus. Who knows how to spell that word off the top of their head?
I do not actually.
You
I probably do.
you could just tell somebody, "Hey, my password is hippopotamus," and then they would probably still not be able to get in. And then like if you have your system set to give you like three failed password tries before it locks you out, like they'll probably still get locked out. You'll probably be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I was doing some research in the background here, and I couldn't help myself. Because I've never seen a violation of this before. I decided to just throw it in ChatGPT, full transparency here. So I said, "Hey, what would a violation of Control 3.5.11 include?" And here's the list it gave me. It said, displaying passwords as plain text while typing. Again, I've never seen a system that's like a real commercial product do that, but that's one really extreme example. Another one is a login error message that specify what part failed. Interestingly, I'm just curious. If I go to my Office 365 portal here, and I'm gonna log out. What's that?
That sounds to me like what you mentioned because that's the difference between a commercial product and a compliant, protected product. That sounds to me like what you mentioned, like it just saying authentication error. What it sounds like is like if it says your password is incorrect, that might be considered a violation of this, or at least that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I'm just gonna test. I'm gonna see if I can actually fail a login and just see what happens here.
Just this whole Zoom window disappears. Po- Podcast over.
Yeah, easier said than done. So, what else did it say? Login error message specifies what part failed. It could say example username not found or incorrect password. These messages confirm
Yep.
whether a username is valid, which aids attackers. So again, I have to take a closer look, but I think perhaps maybe some of the Microsoft Azure government stuff just will say, hey, authentication failed kind of thing, and we'll tell you specifically. Password reset pages that confirm account existence. Example is an email has been sent if the account exists. is compliant, but account not found is a violation. Um, yeah, fair enough, but really that's interesting. I'm not sure because if an email has been sent if the account exists, I guess that's pretty vague. The next one is autofilling sensitive fields of browsers if a login form auto-populates usernames or passwords without user intent. I don't know what would do that. Um, I just don't know what would do that, right? Because any system that you're going to use to access CUI, well, to fully authenticate, you're going to need multi-factor authentication. And so even if it gives you a clue about the username and password, it doesn't matter because you still can't actually fully authenticate without multi-factor authentication. So perhaps maybe, we can walk this back and we can say, well, an example might be you made your own access database and there's no multi-factor authentication and that database is accessible over a network and contains CUI. That I could see a little bit easier if there was no multi-factor authentication, but then you would be in violation of all kinds of other controls because, 353 multi-factor authentication wouldn't be in place. So that could be an example. Uh,
Basically, what we're talking about here is layman's terms, is things that are commonplace on commercial devices. Like, you're on your favorite, online shopping website and you go to check out and you put in the shipping address and it autofills your address. Or
that's
you
right.
or you log into your to one of your a site that you use frequently and you go to log in and you click the username box and your username with your password stored pops up. That stuff is commonplace on commercial products, but this stuff cannot happen on machines or organizational systems that contain CUI. That's basically what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So another one it says is authentication logs visible to unauthorized users. So for instance, if a shared login screen displayed a list of recently used usernames. Um, Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Microsoft technically does that, but you still can't authenticate
Yeah.
because you need your MFA key. So, in that respect, it's interesting. And then the final one that mentions is CAPTCHA, MFA, or login forms that leak system behavior. For example, if a CAPTCHA MFA challenge only appears when the correct username is entered. Well, I hate to say it, but that's exactly what these forms do. You can't get to the MFA screen unless you've got a successful login and password. So that one's pretty suspect to me. Compliance systems mask password input with asterisks or dots, use generic error messages like invalid username or password. Um, Avoid revealing whether a username or account exists, and log failed attempts discreetly for admins only to see. So again, just kind of looking at that straight out of ChatGPT, if you will, just trying to find some example for you guys out there in the audience, what might apply here. But yeah, generally speaking, if you're using commercial software, you're going to be in a great place.
And that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever-evolving world of defense. We'd like to extend our appreciation to Mike for joining us and talking about the very important, if not slightly confusing topic of obscuring authentication. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and connect with us via our social media channels. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. If they haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, they should like, subscribe, and definitely tell a friend. Come on, join the fun, where we're trying to help you understand compliance, understand how to meet these controls, and if nothing else, make a little fun.
You heard him, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. And we'd also really appreciate if you could take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought-provoking episodes and high-quality content. Join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.